So they've established their first contact and they've got a sense of Tolkachev now. And I guess they've got a plan. I mean, they've got an understanding of his work, of where he might be, but you've got to kind of then build a plan for an ongoing relationship. So how is he going to get information? How is he going to get it out? How is he going to get it to the CIA? That becomes the kind of real challenge going forward.
CIA passes a letter, lays out a set of sites in Moscow that are around Tolkachev's apartment. Each of them has a code name. So the code name could be Ninochka. And so the idea is the CIA would call, they would ask, and all these sites have the name of an individual. CIA calls Tolkachev's apartment. They say, is Ninochka there? And Tolkachev will say, oh, you've got the wrong number, which would not have been uncommon at the time in the Soviet Union. And Tolkachev would be, for example, they'd call him, they built kind of a calendar of when this is going to happen. So Tolkachev could be called at home once a month on the date that corresponded to the number of the month. So he'd be called on the 1st of January, the 2nd of February, the 3rd of March, and so on. And the plan was that Tolkachev would cover the phone between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on those days to await a wrong number call. Because remember, again, to his family, everything has to look normal. And his family's in the apartment. He's not going to send them out of the apartment. He's only got one phone. There's no cell phones at this time. So he's covering the phone. And then depending upon the name asked for by the caller, Tolkachev is going to be directed to one of those, prearranged dead drop sites. And then once a month, on the date that corresponded to the number of the month, plus 15 days, so 18 March, 19 April, etc., Tolkachev will be directed to appear at one of several prearranged sites at a specified time according to the month. And so at those sites, he could wait for 5 minutes. And then there was a password and a recognition signal that are incorporated into the plan in case someone other than the regular case officer, so in case they have to send someone other than Gilshire to go make the meeting.
Right. So that is the plan going forward for how they're going to meet. And at this point, they've also got a sense of how good he is and how potentially valuable he is as an agent from that initial meeting, haven't they?
Well, yeah, and I think this is where, once he begins to pass that massive notebook and this thing starts going, the CIA gets a sense that this guy is going to be a game-changing asset. Basically, coming out of this, all the raw stuff that Tolkachev produces, there's 100+ page intelligence report that gets produced that the Air Force, probably the first guy who read it, has like a brain aneurysm because it's so valuable. There are formulas, diagrams, drawings of weapons and electronic systems. There are hand copies of secret documents that authorize the construction of new types of aircraft that are not even at that point known in the West. And it's kind of almost a peek into the blueprints for planes in the Soviet fleet that wouldn't even see the skies for another decade. And Tolkachev, again, says that his goal is to inflict the maximum possible damage on the Soviet system. He lays out, and again, I think from the standpoint of CIA and kind of the agent handling piece of this, Tolkachev lays out a 12-year plan to spy and the information he's going to provide in each stage. So again, you get this psychological, kind of scrape below the surface here, a really structured, ordered mind and an absolutely fierce determination to do whatever is required over the long term. And Tolkachev also gives a very precise description in here of how secret documents are handled at the institute where he works, and how, just like at CIA headquarters, Gordon, it's possible to check out secret documents during the day and just kind of walk out of the building. There's like no.
Is that true?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is true.
Really?
It's one of the things that shocked me was when I went in as a young, bright-eyed analyst, Gordon. I assumed that there was going to be like, there's a bag check, or there's some rigorous kind of set of procedures. And what you see in these top secret bureaucracies, I guess, is that they really are built on trust. And so once they've sort of given you the polygraph or tested you, or in Tolkachev's case, I mean, he's gone through all kinds of kind of background investigations by the KGB. Once you're in, you're part of the team. And even in a highly suspicious system like in the Soviet Union, in order for the work to get done, Tolkachev has to have access to these documents. And so what he can do is, and this is going to be kind of the sausage making of his spying, is what he'll do is he'll just check documents out and take them out of the building on his lunch break and take them home and begin to photograph them.
Being able to photograph them is the key, isn't it? Because we're talking about kind of technical documents, other documents. You can't really, you haven't got time to note them down in a lunch break. You haven't got photocopiers in those days, or at least, not ones that would be easily available. They were pretty heavily controlled, I think, in the Soviet Union, what there were. So it's all about the photography. So that becomes the key, is using a camera to basically, just as we often think about with these Cold War spies, to just sit there and kind of snap the pics of the documents and do as many as you can in the lunch break under pressure.
The amazing thing is that as recently as the late 1960s, so a few years before the Tolkachev case, the CIA didn't really have a good camera for use by its agents. And so agents' assets in Moscow, they had used this sort of commercially available Minox 3. It worked okay, but it was really hard to do it covertly. The shutter was noisy. It required two hands, so kind of you're going to look conspicuous. You had to have very specific lighting. And of course, if you're photographing documents in an office, you oftentimes don't have control over the lighting. So the Minox is kind of out, right? Initially, Tolkachev is given a model called the Molly, which is based on the Minox, but it had some modifications that CIA had worked on with the contractor. It was named after the designer's daughter, Molly. Tolkachev did not like the Molly. He kind of could tell it was dated. He wanted something better. And the CIA in this period actually was working on one. There's a model called the Tropel, named for a company in Rochester, New York, that had made it for CIA. It's about a sixth the size of the Minox. It's got this kind of cylindrical design. The film in it was actually based off of film that Kodak had built for CIA to use in spy satellites. So very thin film. It could be fitted into a fountain pen or a cigarette lighter. But here's the thing about this. So the Tropel, it comes with a risk, right? So Tolkachev is a new agent, and there is absolutely no reason to have a camera like this other than for spying. So he gets caught with one of these. It is
game over.
A death sentence, most likely, right? So what they settle on, the CIA and Tolkachev, is a 35 millimeter Pentax for use in his office. So commercially available. There's a reason he might have this, right? And they give him 2 Tropels for testing at home to get him comfortable, but say, don't bring these, into the office or anything like that. And interestingly enough, Gordon, there is a painting, there's actually a wall at CIA headquarters at Langley in the F corridor, which is just by the wonderful Langley gift shop and just down the way from the Dunkin' Donuts in the cafeteria. And it's got this wall of paintings of really kind of incredibly daring, high impact operations that the CIA has run over the course of its history. And one of those paintings is of Adolf Tolkachev. And in that painting, he is holding the Pentax camera over the back of a chair. It's kind of in the low light, and he's photographing a document. And the clock in that painting reads 12:30 p.m., which is intentional. It's very near the end of his lunch hour, and it's when he would be at home photographing these documents. And so it's kind of, as a bit of a side note, it's very interesting. Now you have this very bustling corridor at Langley. Obviously, we're 2 generations removed from Tolkachev and in his case, but that operation stands as kind of this testament to really him and the work he did all through this camera.
So they've got the communications plan, the commo plan, as you put it. They've got the camera to him. He's got his lunch hour in which he can snap as many documents as possible. I guess he gets to work and he becomes incredibly productive, doesn't he? I mean, that's what's astonishing, is just how much, it's again back to the drive to just do as much as he can when it comes to gathering intelligence from the Institute.